Okay, Obisck, would you like to tell the class your story? Of course. So basically, there's a monster,
and then they all scream out in agony. But he's secretly a monster,
and his brother is trying to kill him. But he's resurrected by the monster man.
And
that was nice. And that's what would have happened if I was allowed to continue writing that story. Back in year 7, each week we were expected to write a story and share it with the class. I decided that each week I was going to write a new chapter of an ongoing story called Graphic Illusions, with each following chapter having graphic insert a adjective or noun or whatever. Anyway, it was like a horror-like story involving 4 young adults trying to unveil the mysteries of their town. My inspirations for this story were largely Gravity Falls and the animated Igor movie with the suicidal rabbit. Yeah, I'll get into that later. Anyway, I'll sum up the original story from what I can remember. So basically, there are 2 little boys, Callan and Gray, and they have this older brother. And he was all wacky and decided to burn down the house and kill their parents. That's not even relevant later. That's just backstory stuff. Anyway, he ended up dying, so Callum and Gray were put into adoption services. Anyway, so Gray is convinced that Callum was the one who caused the fire because of a little thing about him. He's corrupt. What's corrupted mean? And I'm not talking about, music choice. In this story, this is, the 3rd story in this made-up world. And in the 3rd story, all the magic from the 2nd story is locked away in a crystal in the ocean or something. Because of all the magic being mixed and being unstable and being in this tightly enclosed area, occasionally little slivers of the magic escape from the crystal and materialize into these parasites, and they infect and become one with the host fetus. Bada bing, bada boom, these fetuses have magic, and sometimes it's sometimes a lot of the time it's not great magic. It's this malformed, malintentive, malnutrient. No, it's just not very appropriate magic for a child to be handling because they'll end up hurting themselves or others because it's unstable. Anyway, because he's corrupted, and that's what it's called in this universe, but I'll come up with a more fancy name later. And because of this, he gets adopted by a strange man who did not exist in the original story, but I will put him here because the original story is just dumb. He takes Callum into the woods off of a small town and raises him studying the magic within Callan and all that stuff. But he dies of old age, and Callum is left to grow into adulthood. I don't know, I think he's 17 when this happens in the original. But before he's left by himself, his adoptive dad leaves him with 2 pets, a zombie taxidermy talking lynx and a robot dog. Wow. Anyway, let's jump to the town. On the main road towards the town, there's an abandoned hospital. And in the original, some cops heard talk of some children running around the hospital, so they investigate. I believe one of the cops is called Zane, but I might be wrong. But I can't remember, so they're investigating this hospital, and one thing leads to another, and these children were actually illusions. Oh my god, like the title! Caused by a big old monster. The cops escape and return to the town. Random weird stuff continues to happen, and these 3 kids, Terry, Leah, and Leo, creative names, I know, are all we're gonna Scooby-Doo this shit, and they do. They Scooby-Doo it to the max. Their first lead in this investigation is the weird mansion in the forest where the weird man and his weird son live, because if weird things are happening, it's most likely related to them. And that was the beginning of the story. Other things were that Terry and Callum would fall in love, Lee would have her own separate arc from everyone else after Leo gets knocked into a coma after a fight with the monster, which he was helping, by the way. How was he helping? Well, he was helping the monster by helping its leader, who's the leader of the monster. Oh my god, it's Callan's brother, Gray! Oh my god, epic plot twist, because he's just pissy or whatever, revenge or something. I don't know, and Terry almost dies in the end, but, like, everything turns out fine. Oh, and Callan can't touch people because he'll kill them with his corruptive magic. Ooh. And that was the general gist of the story, which is a bit bare bones, all things considered, and let's not, and let's just say the characters were lacking, and it was based in this generic forest with nothing going on for it besides it being a small town. So, going into this rewrite, I want to overhaul most of it. I probably won't be getting too into the actual story because I just kind of wanted to focus on the characters and make them more interesting, have the setting itself be more relevant, and just do some general workshopping to the concept. So, let's get into it. Firstly, let's go over the world setting, that sort of thing. This story is set in a fantasy world where magic exists and stuff, but in the story, all the magic is locked away because in the like ages ago there was a war, apocalypse stuff, you know. Anyway, now originally I had based this world off a generic American style forest. I liked Gravity Falls a lot, but going into this rewrite I wanted to base things more off my own experience and have the setting inspired by Australian small towns because I really enjoy Australian small towns, specifically the town from the movie Oddball, which is Warrnambool in the Gunditjmara and the Kire Warong country. So I'm basing the town where the story takes place based off Warrnambool, but it's not technically Warrnambool because the world that this story takes place, it is based off Earth, but like the map is not Earth. However, it is kind of Earth because literally when I was planning out this world, I took Earth's map and I just moved some countries around and I did not invent anything new. Anyway, yeah, so we're basing things off Australia, but it's not technically Australia, it's more like a ripoff, if that makes sense. I also don't have the name for this town, and let's just call it Towny Town until I'm bothered to come up with something for its actual name. First up, let's redesign that robotic dog Tech spelt T-E-C-K, but on his collar, because originally on his collar it was spelled Tick or something. I don't know, because he didn't know how to spell his own name or something. I don't know, I wasn't thinking. Going into this, I wanted to get rid of, how should I put it? A certain look to this character. I wanted to take inspiration from how Guardians of the Galaxy 3 redesigned Rocket's friends. I ended up making Tech this Italian Greyhound looking thing because I love how anxious they are. In the original story, he could talk, but I think I'm gonna get rid of that concept because it's one thing to have a cyborg dog and it's another thing to have a talking cyborg dog. Backstory wise, he was just this normal dog with a broken leg or something, but Callan fixed him up, but that's so boring, so I'm making it so that Callan had a little accident as a kid and his adopted dad fixed up the dog and made him into a bit of a robot. So yeah, he's definitely not alive anymore, or maybe he is, I don't know. I haven't really thought too much about the actual story for these characters, to be honest, but mainly I just wanted to because I wanted to tell this story through like a TV show medium, and well, things that wouldn't be shown in the TV show aren't really that relevant, so I'm not thinking about them that much. So basically, Tech's story is implied through subtle stuff like Terry, who will be renamed, we will get to that, asking like, what happened? And Callan going quiet and like an awkward stare or something, you know. Anyway, here he is. Next up, we have the second part to this dynamic duo, Scrap, or at least I think his name was Scrap. Yeah, no, it was. He was a zombie Frankenstein's monster lynx type creature anyway. That doesn't make sense. Nor did it ever. The lynx part, not the Frankenstein monster thing. That made complete sense. So, since Australia does not have lynxes and actually has a huge feral cats issue, I decided to make Scrap a feral cat, whose backstory is similar to Tech's, so we're not gonna change that much, besides the fact that it will not be an accident this time, it will be very purposeful. Since some people in Australia actually hunt these wild cats as like a sport thing, as well as just to curb the insane amount of like dead birds these cats cause, it's an actual real big issue. So perhaps maybe Callan's father took him out and went on a couple hunting trips, and one day they return with this wildcat, and you know, bada bing bada boom, his crazy adopted father gives it life in the Victor Frankenstein way. Anyway, Scrap is based off the suicidal rabbit from the Igor movie. Little me had a little hyperfixation on that character, and it was bad. Like, rewatch the movie every day bad. He was this sarcastic creature who was like kinda like the little devil on Callan's shoulder, but now he's just a very spooky cat who cannot talk. We are getting rid of the annoying merchandisable characters that talk and sound weird. Cough cough wish. Sorry, I had to get into that. Now, before we move on to the main group redesigns, I wanted to share a little bit of the story I wrote for this thing. Just for you lot to kind of get a vibe of what the hell this was. Now, I'm well aware that this story didn't include any of the main characters and instead focused on a cop called Reed, who was a family friend of Terry's family. Obviously, I'm aware that my amazing storytelling might have been so subtle in what it was conveying about all the cops and the walls and whatever, so I'm gonna summarize it. Basically, a cop, Reed, thought his name was Zane. Did you know he's a cop? Anyway, so this cop goes to investigate this abandoned hospital outside of town and gets attacked by a monster that can create illusions, thus the name Graphic Illusion. And his cop friends get unalived. What a creative little lad I was. Jesus, who knows, I might rewrite this, you know, but this was kind of like a prologue. This was meant to be like the setup, you know, before we got into the actual characters, so there's that. Okay, let's get into the human redesigns. First off, I wanted to make some, you know, well thought out portraitures of what I wanted these characters to look like, rather than just like jumping into it. Callan, I really wanted to embody that kind of like very strong-faced model type people that, you know the ones that on TikTok and they dress in all the fancy outfits and they have that kind of like deadpan stare. Those kind of guys. I wanted him to kind of appear a little bit weird, a little bit spooky, but you know, kind of have that kind of cold look to him. He also looks a little bit old because his magic powers. Ooh. Main character Terry follows on. I will be renaming him as well as the other two because those names are just. He's just Terry. Like I'm just Ken. Okay, so you probably noticed that in my old art, I tend to have an issue with making skin tones, you know, actual skin tone and not just pale white. So, I've definitely improved on the front of actually, like, diversifying what I draw, what I make, and all that stuff. I wanted to make a tan character as a kid, and so I thought that originally Terry was a tan character, but no, he's still white. So, this time around, I actually wanted to do that justice. I wanted to do that thought justice. Following on, we have Leah, who is an aspiring director in the original story, but I will also keep that in the rewrite because I think it's really cool. But her and her brother were meant to be like twins and have the same name and, you know, play off that kind of twin thing, but that's boring. So she's gonna, but like in the OG, she was already the more distinct of the two, having her own separate story arc, even from Callan and Terry, because her brother Leo gets comatose, and that's insane. That's little me was crazy. Last up is Leo. God awful naming, I know. Anyway, you can see that Leah and him suffered from the same affliction that Terry and Callan had in their original design, so I wanted to branch out, and since I was basing the story off Rip of Australia, I do wanted to include some Gundit Jamara representation, because, you know, I think it's important. If I'm basing this off Australia, I think it's important to have Australian voices, you know? But also, I'm not gonna really develop this story, so I don't know, I think it's cool. I think most people should do some research about the areas they're basing their stories off in if they're basing it off Australia anyway. Also, Leo was always kind of against Callan, and in the originals because it was helping Callan's brother or whatever, but I don't like that. and I think it's more understandable that he's just wary of the weird guy that lives in the abandoned mansion in the bush. So that sounds better than making him helping someone who's like insane. Okay, now we can finally move on to the full redesigns. Callan, he's the secondary main character, and he's got his corruption magic parasite that gives him his malformed magic. His specific type of magic is like weapons based, I guess. I don't know, he can turn his hand into like a weapon. Okay, so before the magic was sealed up, there was distinct types of magic, like the avatar or whatever, and you couldn't really learn these without being genetically predisposed to being able to learn. Those with magic had like unnatural eye color, but after the magic got sealed, it all kind of melded together. So Callan won't have any weird colored eyes like he did in the original. He'll just have like weirdly colored sclero, however you say that word. I can't read it right. But getting back to the magic, his magic is mainly a mix of weapons, I guess darkness magic, ooh how emo, and a bunch of other stuff. Like, I don't know, man. Anyway, so originally he'd grow weird cat ears or something and have his limbs take on that shadow effect that every edgy middle schooler gives their OCs. But now I wanted him to still turn into something monstrous, but minus the cat ears. But instead of the shadow effect on his limbs, he's instead got bruising, because I think it's really cool. It would be like a really cool indicator, because although possessing magic that allows for some form shifting, his body cannot withstand it, because the magic is not nice magic. And when exposed multiple times to this form, his limbs kind of start bruising a lot, and he's now got permanent bruising on his hands, because as a kid he was, you know, exposed a lot to forming his hands into different things. Stuff like that. Another thing was that he could also poison people and kill them by touch. But that's pretty edgy, so instead he'll just have this thing where if you're exposed to any of his bruised skin for too long, he'll start getting you sick and stuff, like spray can fumes. And it can be like lethal if it's a small creature or whatever. Anyway, he wears gloves because of this, except with his pets who are already a little bit deceased. So no harm, no foul, you know? Since we're keeping his adoption story, his adopted father is going to be, not outright a bad dad, but not 100% a great one. Like, he cared for Callan and stuff, but he would also, you know, be trying to use him as a patient in his research onto the corrupted. Because of this, Callan did learn to control his magic a bit more, but he was also homeschooled, so he didn't have much social, and he did go out to town with his dad as a kid to get, like, food and stuff, but everyone kind of just knew them as the widows that lived outside of town. When he got older, he went out a bit more, you know, mainly to places outside of town. He did get a driver's license before his dad passed, which was not obtained legally, because, I don't know, his dad was a part of this weird outside the government research team or something. He had weird ways of getting things like passport and licenses. Callan also has a forklift license for this reason. Callan is extremely reserved and has the same disposition as a cat at night when their eyes reflect off of a torch. His father died recently, and so he hasn't really been going out that much besides when he went to the funeral, to which himself and some of his father's work colleagues attended. His favorite song is California Dreaming, and he used to think that California was its own country until he was 14. P.S. The reason his name is Gray is because his brother's original name was Gray, but I thought it was a bit odd, so now it's his last name. Next up, we have that name is making me sick. Let's change it to Theodore Deering, which is long for Teddy Deering. So, like, a couple letters changed, but nothing too much. In this, you can see me struggling with side profiles. Like, during this project, I could not for the life of me figure out how to make any side profile look good. Anyway, so Teddy works for his parents at their bakery, which I've called the Dear Deering Bakery. I don't know, I thought it sounded cute. They specialize in cheesecakes because I'm a sucker for cheesecakes, and also those dry-aged malted sausages. Yeah, because his family has roots from Malta, or I guess the equivalent to Malta in this weird world. Anyway, now in this rewrite, he's a huge, like, crime fanatic. Like, not in the way that he causes crimes, but he likes listening to true crime, investigating, and all that stuff, which he was in the original, but like, I never really outright said it, but his dream job is to be a detective. Before this rewrite, he was also kinda a bit, twinkish, as were most of my characters when I was younger, because I didn't know how to draw anyone besides this specific type of character. Anyway, it was unintentional, of course. I was young, I didn't know how to draw anything else. But now I want to diversify. I want to explore new ways of drawing characters, so he goes to the gym now. He's gonna get swole. He will still be short, but he's gonna be buff, and also have facial hair. He's my baby boy, and he's all grown up now. So, Teddy was the driving force of the group in the original story, as when the gang caught word that strange happenings were happening, Teddy convinced them to investigate. Since he's the family friends with the local detective and wanted to prove something, I don't like this plot point, and I will be changing it to focus more on Leah. She'll also be getting a new name, but I'll explain that when I get to her. Teddy and Callum were written to have like a romance in the original, a very typical and boring one, and I don't really know how to write it any more interesting. Callan, he has a lack of social skills in this rewrite due to, you know, not being able to get outside as a kid. He's not great at romance and will not even register he's got romantic feelings for Teddy until it's very late into the story. Teddy, however, will be very interested in Callan, wanting to help him, like, see the world and experience it, and, like, you know, sharing movies, like, you haven't seen this movie? Let's have a movie night, or something like that. And between you and me, Teddy realizes that Callan isn't really like the other girls. I don't know. He's gonna have one of those moments where he's like, Callan's just different. I don't know how to write this romance. I don't even know how to do anything. Also, but I do think it will be interesting to navigate writing a relationship between these two characters who can't really physically interact without Teddy getting a bit sick, but due to the previously mentioned funky poison magic thing that Callan has going for him. This will come into play later in their romance, I think, and Callan will blame himself and try and distance himself from Teddy, and then they can have a romantic scene in the rain or whatever. I don't know, but I just think it would be interesting to see them try and navigate a relationship without physical aspects like hugging or holding hands and stuff. Still not great at writing romance, but I'm working on it. Also, Callan is an asexual character because I am, and I want him to be too. But back on to Teddy. He was originally the main character, and I'm kind of more interested in having all four of these characters share the limelight, so he'll get a little bit less screen time or whatever. In terms of personality, he was always a very big go-getter and very energetic. He's got Labrador kind of vibes, and he's extremely helpful and supportive. I remember he had an older sister, but I think I'll change that so he has, like, a younger sister, or multiple young siblings. I don't know. All I know is he's a very loving and understanding and overall a nice person, but because of this understanding, he often finds himself in a neutral if there's any conflict, and he's a huge people pleaser and tends not to have very strong morals because of that, like in the way that he's easily convinced into helping anyone if their case is good enough. Obviously he's against like things like murder, but like if someone's like, oh, can you keep a secret and not tell insert person because they'll be mad, even if the secret is worth telling, he'll probably keep the secret. And that's why he still works at his parents' bakery, because he loves it, but he also cares for his parents, but he's also the oldest, so he can't even abandon them and live his life out as a detective because he feels guilty about it. His favorite song is Kids, but that's only right now because he kind of flip-flops between different songs. Okay, next we have let's change her name to something cooler, like Marlo. I like Marlo, but I also thought about calling her Luann, but I think Marlo fits her better. I gave her the last name Lees as a tribute to the original names, but her name is now Marlo. Marlo in the original was this rambunctious, kind of out there personality, similar to the OG Teddy, and I do still want to keep that, but make it a bit more sarcastic now, because she's a younger sibling. Yeah, I'm getting rid of the twins aspect, and putting Marlo and Leo a year or so apart in age. She'll be the younger of the two, and just out of high school, so she's still kind of planning her life. She's currently on a gap year, and trying to figure out something to make into a movie. Yeah, I'm keeping the director thing because I'm actually making the main driver of this story. When the gang hears about strange happenings, it's Marlo's idea that convinces everyone that this is the exact kind of found footage horror documentary she needs to kick off her directorial debut. Oh my god, maybe the series is told through found footage? Oh my god, no, that's such a good idea! Okay, so Marlo and Leo's parents in the OG story were kind of out of town on a business trip, and I do like the idea that Marlo and Leo kind of rely on each other and their parents are a little bit absent, but saying that parents being on a business trip, it kind of sounds generic. So I don't know, maybe they're instead visiting family or something, or there's something happening where they need to be out of town. I don't know, I haven't resolved it yet, but I guess we'll go with the business and trip until I think about something more interesting. All I need is for them to be out of the picture until Leo gets into a coma, because I'm still keeping that because it was a good character arc for Marlo. So let's get into that character arc. Basically, in the confrontation, the monster, it basically ends up hurting Leo because Callan and Terry didn't stop it. Marlo gets pissed at the two and stops wanting them around as she begins to isolate herself, and then she ends up befriending some store clerks, I don't know. And during this, learns the lesson of, I don't remember, she learns a lesson, I don't remember what it was, but let's workshop this. So, we'll have it that during a confrontation, Teddy has a gun or some kind of weapon, and he can either shoot this monster, but if he does, they'll never know where its base is, where it came from, you know, if there's more of them, yada yada. But if he does shoot it, it'll save Leo from getting hurt, because, I don't know, I guess Leo's holding this monster off. Marlo is yelling at Teddy to shoot the thing as Leo tries to keep it at bay. Callan is telling him no, they need it alive. Teddy is torn, not because he doesn't know which option is better, but because he's hearing all this noise and doesn't want to disappoint one or the other party. He's a little bit of a people pleaser and he's kind of struck with fear. Maybe he's also still recovering from being sick by Callan, but I don't know. He just can't think properly in the moment. Anyway, so before he can shoot the creature, it throws Leo into a wall and he becomes unresponsive. Due to the shock of the throw, Teddy shoots at the creature and misses, but it scares the monster off, leaving the three still conscious in silence. Marlo will run over to Leo and get Teddy to help him to the hospital and telling Callan to fuck off. Callan will try and reason with her when they're all sitting in the hospital waiting room or whatever. Oh, by the way, there's a new hospital in town instead of the old one outside of town. Teddy also tries talking to her, but she snaps at them and tells them to leave her alone, and then that they've already done enough harm, you know, that kind of generic confrontation stuff. Teddy is like, well, we didn't know this would happen, it's all quite a mess. But now Marlo's alone and she calls up her parents to tell them what happened, and then their parents are back in the thing! During the solo arc, she'll have to deal with whether or not to forgive Catelyn and Teddy, and also the idea that she sent them on this investigation to begin with, and she starts to feel responsible for her brother's coma, which is never great. I don't know how to end this arc, because I think it'd be cool if she took on this Van Helsing-esque persona and went on her own kill mission to the beast, but I'm also not opposed to her doing some introspection or whatnot. Haven't decided yet. Anyway, Marlo is kind of like a small dog syndrome person. Like, she's the same height as Teddy, almost, but like, she's got a lot of spunk to her. She's very, very driven, very determined and very focused on her goals as becoming a director. Some of her favorite media is anything found footage, Blair Witch Trials, as well as the Aussie TV show Deadlock, which exists in this world. I watched it, it was pretty alright, it was quite funny, but Marlo likes it. I think Marlo will like it. Her favorite song is She-Wolf by Shakira, since the instrumental is pretty cool. She's also very into bright, colourful clothes, but since small town rip-off Australia doesn't tend to have much besides what people have dropped off at the local op shop, her options are limited. Finally, we've got Logan! His name is Logan, so Logan Lees. He sounds like a superhero. Anyway, in the OG, Logan was going to be this twist villain, and he was gonna have a redemption arc or whatever. He was gonna be working with Callan's evil brother Grey. The motive? Because he wanted to ensure Teddy and Marlo would stay in town and not move away, which is so bullshit. You risk everyone in this town for the sake of hanging out with your friends a bit longer? Like, bro, no, that's not it. So we're doing away with that completely. Logan is now a regular older brother. He'll still be extremely attached to Teddy and Marlo because, you know, he's still got a lot of overprotective qualities, but because of this, he is very skeptical of Callan, not because he's working with his brother, but just because, you know, Callan's a weirdo. He still wants both of his friends to stay close to him. He was the one who gave Marlo the idea to take the gap year, but he is also not so bloody insane as he was in the original to risk his whole town for that. No, 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 no. He's going to be the eldest of the three and the only one with a legally obtained driver's license, to which Marlo and Teddy use to the benefit of themselves very frequently. Logan is kind of a classic Aussie. He had an Eshe phase when he was younger, which he was extremely over the top about, but grew out of that within a year. Now he's very laid back and he's quite caring, but he'll hold a grudge and has a strong set of morals that he will not compromise. For instance, he does not like taking sick days. He will show up to work even if, I was gonna say even if he was dying, but he gets into a coma, so he's pretty much not gonna show up for work during that and be pretty distraught about his broken work streak. Anyway, by the way, his job is, he's a lifeguard at the local beach. Since the town is small and not many people frequent the beach, he doesn't get like that many hours. So when the cold seasons roll around, he likes to take on trading jobs around the town, mostly helping out with the market setup, because this town does weekly farmers markets. He's also got a ute, so yeah, everyone in the town looks at him as like kind of a responsible one, a reliable one. However, he frequently feels he doesn't live up to the town's expectations, since he isn't as academically gifted as his sister Marlo, who was like an A-grade student in classes like English and Humanities. He was more of a sports kid. Sometimes Logan thinks that his sister will leave him for a more promising future and he'll be left in the dust, but she reassures him that they'll be there for each other. They've got a bit of a Mabel and Dipper dynamic, because I don't have a very large reference of sibling relationships to pull from. He's going to butt heads a lot with Callum because it's a good idea not to trust the sketchy man living alone in the big old mansion in the woods, who, as said before, literally has dead pets. He's like the human in a Muppets cast, essentially. I honestly really like Logan's design. He feels the most real to me. I don't know. Really, I didn't even base him off anyone I knew. He feels real and understandable. I really like it. Probably my second favorite to Callan, because I'm pretty happy with how that creepy little guy turned out. To be honest, Teddy is probably my least favorite currently, and it's not to say I don't like him. I do like all of these characters. I'm really happy with how they came out, but I'm just not right with Teddy's design right now. Maybe I'll redesign him, but I'm quite pleased with how the others came out. Now, you all remember that story I was reading before? Well, I rewrote it, so let's get into it, shall we? We actually can't, because I decided to submit it to a writing competition, and I don't wanna, you know, like, I can't publish it anywhere, so maybe I'll read it to you after it's published. I don't know, maybe I'll read it to you after the competition, but I can't read it to you, I'm very sorry. I'll read the first part though, I think. I can do that? Yeah, I can do that. I can read the first part. And that's all I'm gonna read to you. That's all I'm gonna read, because it's 1,700 words. I'm not reading all of that. I'm not reading all of that. Anyway, so that's my, redo of the story. Woo! Nobody is dying yet! But, you know, Logan's in a coma. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this OC rewrite. I'm very well aware it was a bit all over the place, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. If this does well, I might make a part 2, or another rewrite for some of my other projects. Something like that. Also, commissions are open! I've opened my commission, so if you're interested in that, please DM me via Cara. I'll have some stuff in the description, you know. Have a good day. Like and subscribe if you want to, or don't. I can't make you choose, but please, if you're at all considering it, I implore you, subscribe. So until next time, I will see you all later, and I have no ideas for the next coming videos. We'll figure it out. Goodbye!